All right, can I just get someone to tell me, do the slides work off the website? I pushed them literally before I walked over here. So if they're working, that's great. And if not, okay, good. I think today is our last day on cryptography. I'm going to do my best today. I am not a theorist, and that will show, unfortunately. All right, so on Wednesday, there is a tutorial this week. You do not have to show up if you do not want to. This is basically a themed office hours by the TA. So if you would like to show up to this tutorial and work on the password game as a group with other people, please do. I will have a TA there. They will help you get this VM actually working. I expect that for a percentage of your many different operating systems I am looking at in this class, this VM will not work. We're doing our best, but some of you have very interesting operating systems. If that is the case, I encourage you to try this game out with a friend, because a lot of the stuff you have to do involves maybe writing a bit of code and then running it against the game fire. And so you can actually try that with a friend who's working on it as well.
Wednesday at what time?
I think it's 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you pull up the outline, it's on the outline.
Okay.
And if it's not on the outline, tell me, because that means the master's students can't see it. All right. Up until this moment, keys have appeared by magic. So we've just been talking about it as if everyone just has the key. But the most obvious question is, how did everyone get the key? Almost all of modern cryptography is sitting on this premise that only authorized people have the key. So think back to our lectures on authentication. Have you seen any authentication since we started crypto? And when magic vanished, right? The whole point of this thing is confidentiality and integrity. And yet we have no authentication. This is kind of horrific. Crypto is entirely sitting on a singular assumption. Only the people who should have the key have the key. And the moment that assumption breaks, all of crypto shatters. So, how do two people get a key? Especially, how do two people get a key long distance? So many of your laptops are currently doing HTTPS connections to many of the websites you're looking at right now. Did you go and take your bicycle over there and swap keys? So somehow on Earth, your laptop, when connected to a distant server it doesn't know, you swapped keys somehow using magic, and now you have an encrypted connection. Who's got the keys? And how did you get them? And this is pretty much the whole lecture today is on the singular topic of how do we get keys between people. And then I've just thrown this, okay, this is a reference to the chicken and egg problem. If I don't have a secure connection, I can't send the key across the secure connection, but how do I get the key to create a secure connection? And now we have a problem. All right. So we're starting with this idea of public key cryptography. Private key cryptography I will talk about in a moment for those of you who are already primed, but we're now under the assumption that how do we get these keys long distance? So let's slow down for a moment. There's actually two types of ciphers. There's symmetric and ciphers, which is pretty much what we've been talking about thus far. So symmetric and ciphers assume there is a singular key, only one, and it is used in both encryption and decryption. So Playfair is a symmetric cipher. Caesar cipher is a symmetric. Almost everything I've presented to you thus far is symmetric. Also, just easier to understand. The picture here you see is actually this cryptographer from World War II. He is holding up a sheet of silk on which someone has printed a bunch of random characters. These are one-time pad characters. These were literally handed out to spies during World War II. And they're silk, so that you can hide them in your jacket and not have anything to feel. So if someone pats down your jacket, you will feel it. And they're also silk, silk burns really well. And it unravels. So every time you use one of your one-time pads, because you can only use it once, you unravel that column. This is a way of doing key sharing. The old way. we are both in the same place, let's share the secret password sort of method. But this is how, there's also asymmetric key cryptography. That's gonna be the latter part of the lecture. In asymmetric key cryptography, we have two keys. So here we have the encryption key for encryption, and we have the decryption key for decryption, and they are different keys. These are less common because they rely on something called a trapdoor function. A trapdoor function is a one-way function. As someone who's worked in software engineering, you're probably familiar with this concept of primes, how annoying they are. Very, very simple example of a trapdoor function is, let's take n and let's multiply q and p together, where q and p are both prime numbers. And that will produce a number of the other end. It's not necessarily common, but that's one direction. Reversing this is tricky. I'll have more complicated examples later, but the whole idea is these are all based on these trapdoor methods. It's a bit like hashing, where they're intended to be easy in one direction and hard in the other, because you need to do a lot of computations with your computer. You can't be doing this complex cryptography thing where you're standing on your head and trying to do something. You need to be fast. But inverse needs to be very, very hard. It needs to be the case that an attacker has to work. Ideally, they have to brute force it, which is we take the centuries to learn. So we can use trapdoor functions to securely create a shared key between two people communicating publicly. So for this part, we are assuming the cryptography isn't there. Most of the communications that we talked about get done in the clear. You could do them via signs off the top of your building if you want. It is assumed that the attacker can read everything going across the network. And they're built into that assumption. All right, we're going to spend a lot of time on this slide. So this is Diffie-Hellman key exchange. This was invented in 1976 or maybe 1969. There's a bit of a debate over who invented it because it was invented both inside a security agency and not inside a security agency at the same time. And the idea is that you have two groups. You have here Alice and Bob, and they're sitting on opposite sides of the planet. They don't even know each other. They've never met. Other than being able to talk to each other online, they have no shared data. You can also think of them as your laptop and a web server. This is entirely based on a lot of math, in which we are trying to go and have Alice and Bob both compute the same number without ever sharing math, like increasing math. This is all based on something called a primitive root. So I'm assuming no one here knows. Does anyone here actually know what a primitive root is? Silent, maybe someone in the back raising their hands, not paying attention. Okay, cool. Protocol uses a multiplicative group of integers, modular p, where p is a prime and g is a primitive root modular prime. All right, I have a little example here that was admittedly copied off of Wikipedia because they make really nice stuff. Okay, so we have 3. 3 is a primitive modular of 7. That means that, if I remember correctly, p is supposed to be prime. P here is 7. So 7 is our prime number. I realize 3 is also a prime number, which is sort of confusing in this example. But 7 is. So the idea here is that we have a number 3 that is a primitive root modulo 7, and we start with all the possibilities of 3, not including 7. So 3 to the 1, 3 to the 2, 3 to the 3, 3 to the 4, 3 to the 5, 3 to the 6. All right? The property we want here is that this table can be constructed by the pair of numbers. How that can be done, okay, constructing the table is easy. Identifying the numbers, not so much, and I'm staying out of that. You break off the first one, so you basically break off one multiplication of 3. You have 3 to the 0, 3 to the 1, 3 to the 2, 3 to the 3, 3 to the 4, and 3 to the 5, right? We run mod 7, because that's our number up there, on both sides. Mod 7 on 3 will obviously just produce 3 back every single time, so we have a column of 3s here. And then when we run it against this, we get 1, 3, 2, 6, 4, 5. Because we're actually doing this multiplication, and then we're modding 7. All right, everybody still with me? Then we do our multiplication. 3, 9, 6, 8, 12, 15. We modify 7 again. And wow, this is a weird property. 1, 2, 3. I should just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got all the numbers between 1 and 7, not including 7. That's fancy. We can use this. So what we have up here is a modified thing from Wikipedia. It started as a Wikipedia thing, but I redid the math on it. So if you find this in Wikipedia, the numbers are different. So Alice and Bob both decide to use Diffie-Hellman key exchange. And they both publicly, so in this diagram, this column here is basically the internet. So it can be any public channel. You can view this by holding flashcards up at each other. Anything where you're talking to each other and you do not care who can see it. On the left here is Alice's computer. Only Alice can see Alice's computer. And the right is Bob. And only Bob can see Bob's computer. Okay. Hopefully everyone's with. They publicly in the middle agree to P equals 7 and G equals 3. Alright. P has to be a prime number. I don't think G needs to be a prime number. I think G can be any number. If I remember correctly. Alright, that goes to both of them. Now they both pick a number of their choosing. I don't think it has to be up at below 7, but they have done that here. So Alice chooses 4 and Bob chooses 3. And pick their own. It can be anything. It's up to them. They then take that down and they take these numbers down and they run this algorithm. So they take 3, or in this case G, so G to their number. So you notice that their number is in red. Things on this that are in red are known only to Alice or only to Bob. So we take 3 from our G here, and we take the 4, which is Alice's number. And then we mod it by 7 and we get 4. Same thing over here. We take 3 and we take it to Bob's number 3. So, and we mod that by 7 and we get 6. Alright, so Bob now takes B, which is 6, and Alice takes A, which is 4, and when they swap them. Again, public. So we actually know 4 and 6 is known to the attacker. Then we come down here and we compute our secret key. So S equals 6, which is the number I just got from Bob, to 4, which is my key number, mod 7, and I get 1. And then I do the same thing down here. I take a secret key, I take 4, which I just got from Alice, 3, which is my secret number, Bob's secret number, mod 7, and I get 1. That's strange they both got the same number, isn't it? That will happen every time.
I just want to check, is there a constraint on B that it has to be one of the sort of modular roots?
G has to be prime.
So G has to be prime, but is G also has to be prime as well as a primitive?
I forgot to look that up. I don't think it does. I think it can. No, it does not, because in the original version of this was 24.
Okay.
Yeah, so G does not need to be.
Primitive root? What's the regular root for?
Root.
Well, yeah, but you see it as a primitive root, S6 regular root?
6 regular root? Okay, we're going too far into the math, but I have not cut for this one. In cryptography, I spend a lot of time copying my slides, or else I go out. When we hit networking, I will be a lot more dynamic. I'm more networking. The main point here is in Diffie-Hellman, what is happening is because of the properties here, because it is the case that I can start with this and end up with these numbers over here, it is possible for Alice and Bob to pick their own favorite number, run their own computations, and end up with the same number at the end. And that the information sitting in that central column is insufficient to do this computation. So you do not have enough knowledge in the middle of those numbers to produce the shared key. This is symmetric encryption. So this is a case in which Alice and Bob work together to go and create the same number, and that the information shared across the public channel is insufficient to go and prove this. To actually find the correct key. everyone still with me? I wrote this down for your personal strength, but this is symmetric, right? I have one key and it goes to both encryption keys. That's what this is about. Having a moment because I thought I had a think pair share in here, and I'm just checking where it might have gone. Okay, no, we're good. All right, I think this slide is just a little early. Mod isn't reversible, but sorry, this is where I start falling off the answer. They can share this because they're using these numbers here, A and B, those multiplication numbers. That means that when I take 3 to whatever this number is here, right? Okay, then I do think A and B are capped at 6. So I think A and B are a number between 1 and 6, because then they show up on the table. So Alice here picked 3 to the 4. This brings her across and produces 4. And then Bob picks 3 to the 3, and so he's getting the 6. And we're guaranteed that the numbers that they are getting are sitting in the space between 1 and 6, and that they won't clash. And now we're running off the end of making a theorist. A theorist would have presented to you as a title of math. And I'm sorry, maybe I should set that up.
G to A plus B, G A plus B, and G A plus B. It's now whiteboard.
GA.
Alice had GA, G to the A, Bob had G to B. The attacker can see the attacker can calculate GA plus B, but the key is GA times B.
Alright. I'm going to give you a short answer, which is that if you have deep questions, I really appreciate it. I really suggest that we read the article. It's really well written on this topic and goes into a lot of depth. If I spend a lot of time explaining this here, we will not have time for the public argument.
It looks like there's a new article explaining this.
Diffie-Hellman, it's been here since 1976. It is very well documented with a lot of examples, there's simulators online, you can go and pull. The really big point though is that we're using something like this, where we're using the modular. You're right, modular 7 is hard to undo. Yeah, that is one component here, but the modular 7 is enough by itself because you need a property such that these numbers you pick, if they're combined with a number with some minor constraints, you don't know what it is, they will always generate 10. And without that fact, this whole thing falls apart. This fact explains why this is used more. So why was Caesar not using this? It would have been so much more convenient, right? They're not using it for several reasons. You're going to send messages literally back and forth. But also finding these sorts of puzzles is kind of hard. And later I'll talk about something called the knapsack problem, which is another good example of this. So really these things that require a lot of computation up front, but verification is easy. Things like that are underpinning this form of cryptography. And it makes it okay, so we can also do this asymmetric, and I think I put this slide in kind of a weird place, honestly. Because I was sticking with Diffie-Hellman for another slide or two, and I don't know why I started this early. But anyway, the encryption properties we want is we kind of want two things out of encryption. We want the communication between you and the other party to be confidential, and we want to make sure it's not changed. And I'm lumping those together on purpose. But communication confidential, unchanged. The second thing we want to know is who are we talking to? Authentication. Diffie-Hellman gives you both, actually. So Diffie-Hellman allows you to do a communication, assuming you paired it with a strong crypto cipher that you're using. Now you can use this to go and tell that it's confidential and it's not been changed. had been changed, you would have a problem. Assuming, or if it had been changed, you couldn't decrypt it. And it tells you who you are talking with, what's the authenticity. Because again, crypto is sitting entirely on top of the question or assumption that only these people have it. Other people do not. So at this point, we're going to all pause because I know some of you actually do want to talk to your neighbors maybe about the different elements, and we're going to have a think pair sure. So what kind of situations? So why are we just using different elements? I mean, this seems like awesome in some ways, but it doesn't solve some problems about it. So I want you to think about a situation where definitely element works really well. This kind of communication to share keys. And try to think of a situation where it'd be very annoying to use. Keeping in mind our two properties. Because these two properties do not show up by magic. So 1 minute, think about this. All right, so we want two properties. I've kind of beaten these to death. But getting both properties is what's sitting behind something called public-private key cryptography. Okay, we're going to start with how public-private key cryptography is used. And then I have an example later of the knapsack problem, which is a very toy level example of how you can create this. But I find this horribly confuses most classes I present it to, so we're going to kind of go through this slowly and how it functions before we talk about how to generate it. The idea here is that you have two keys. You have a public key and you have a private key. The public key is given to everybody. You can print them in the newspaper. You can post them on a big sign. You give them away. Here, add the public key. Public. And do not lose your private key. Your private key is kept on just your access because all of crypto is sitting on only one person has this key. These are inverses. So whatever the public key encrypts, the private key can decrypt. And whatever the private key encrypts, the public key can decrypt. Right? They invert each other. I have lockbox pictures of this. So if I encrypt a message with Bob's public key, so here's Bob's public key down here. Public keys in this graphic are always green and private keys are always red. I know the words are always visible from the background, but green, red. So Bob locks something with his public key and Bob's private key can unlock it. They invert each other. Similarly, if you try to do this twice, so if you take Bob's public key and you try to unlock it using the public key, if you pretend it's symmetric encryption, you'll just get a bunch of garbage data out of each other. This does not work. Did I just show it the other way? No, I did not. And the same way works the other way around. So if I take the private key, I can encrypt something with the private key, and then I can unlock it with the public. This property gives us the first one. So it is possible for me, knowing someone's public key, to encrypt something with the public key. I then send that across a public channel. No one can decrypt it without the private key. And only one person has the private key. So anyone can encrypt because everyone's got the public key. They can encrypt it and then they send it. They can broadcast it everywhere. It wasn't that. Because only one person has the inverse key that's able to decrypt it. So we get this property at the top. The information is confidential and integral between me and the other person. Assuming both people have done this, so I have a bunch of public keys, they have a bunch of public keys. I get the message in from Bob, and I just take Bob's public key and I encrypt it. That means in order to have a communication back and forth with another person, 4 keys are involved. And this is where everyone gets horrifically confused. But okay, we're pausing. Is there any questions about this encryption?
This is no longer Diffie-Hellman, right?
This is no longer Diffie-Hellman. We do not have a named method at the moment. This is just how public-private key cryptography works with here. All right, we've got the first property, but we don't have the second property yet. Now, with Diffie-Hellman, I kind of get the second property, and then I would know who it was the same person that I generated the key with last time, but I can't link to it again. We can sort this one. It's even worse because I'm taking this public key. I'm kind of being told, oh, this is definitely this person's public key. Trust me. But it's actually really hard to tell because this is what a public key looks like. This is my old one actually, but this used to be my public key. You can put it on slides if you feel like. That's hard to verify for you. So how do we know who we're communicating with? So the problem is that Bob, in my example, doesn't know who he's communicating from. So the idea here is that you take Bob's public key, Alice goes in and locks something with it, they send it over to Bob, Bob is able to decrypt. All right, great. But how does Bob know it came from Alice? Everyone has Bob's public key. That principle that we're standing on top of is null and void because everyone's got the public key and they've all got the same one.
Would you just use like a Diffie-Hellman key chain between the 2 parties then to generate that pseudo private key that both parties know that they can use for?
Yeah, but we're turtles all the way down. Now, how do you know that you're talking to the right person? In this example, I actually want to talk to Alice. I don't want to just talk to that same person I had a conversation with last time. You know, the problem is you could use a Diffie-Hellman, but Diffie-Hellman won't buy you anything you can't get here. Because you're communicating, well, Diffie-Hellman would get you something you don't get here.
Yeah, I just mean like the authenticator to like sign that they're in the same, under the same pair.
We have a better solution, so I'm not changing this. You could use Diffie-Hellman, it would get you less far than I can get you. So it's possible that here Alice is encrypting something and sending it to Bob. Here Eve encrypts something and sends it to Bob. They look identical. If it's the same message, they look straight up identical. In fact, they don't even need to look like the same message. Bob just got 2 messages, and they both say from Alice on them. And I have no way to verify this. Because unlike in Diffie-Hellman, we are having an active conversation, and we constructed this in the middle of that conversation. And then we kind of keep having this conversation. Bob looks more like email. Or this looks more like email. You can use it on the internet too, but this idea that this message just kind of comes in from nowhere. Is it from Alice? Is it from me? Worse, what if Eve is sitting kind of in the middle of the network, like that picture I showed you of in the middle? What if she's able to delete Alice's message? So now Alice picks it up and goes, hey Bob, I'm totally sending you super secret file. Hang up phone. Sends the message out over the internet. Alice, Eve can't read this because, actually even worse. Okay, never mind. So, let's say Eve is sitting in the middle, and when Bob sent his public key, Eve helpfully just sent her public key instead. Now, Alice has what she thinks is Bob's public key, but it's actually Eve's public key. She encrypts something with this. Eve helpfully decrypts it, looks at it, and then puts the same file back on the network with Bob's public key, which she also has because everyone's got Bob's public key, and forwards it on to Bob. Who's the wiser? The file's got the content that Bob expected via Alice's phone call. So, if that public key is not well linked to an identity, now what are you going to do? Because you can't tell the difference between Eve's public key and Bob's public key. You've got a public key. Now what? This is a statement, so this is a real example. I usually use this in usable security, I would say, human factors example. The US has a lot of trouble with Mexico having drug cartels. It's an ongoing problem. If you are a drug cartel and you're trying to operate across all of Mexico, it'd be nice to have some encryption. Because you really, really want to make sure you are having a conversation with this other person from the drug cartel and you are not having a conversation with the FBI. This would be bad for you, as it was in this case. So what happened here is the FBI convinced the system administrator to swap out the private keys in the system for ones that the FBI knows. So again, we're standing on top of the assumption that only one person's got the private key, and if you look around this university, all of these machines that are all centrally administered, who has the public key? Private key. It's actually, in a lot of cases, where not just one person has access to it. In this case, and then the admin was able to go and swap out the private keys. The FBI had access to the private keys, and then they were able to decrypt all communication being sent back and forth. How is the FBI able to do this? Well, some guy inside this cartel had a bad morning in which he forgot his password. And he couldn't log into his laptop. And that private key is pretty long. Normal people cannot memorize that. So normally you log into your laptop and your laptop has it. So because he couldn't make any of the encryption work that morning, he picked up a phone which had 0 encryption on it and phoned the system administrator. This is a transcript of that conversation. The drug trafficker is really not happy. You didn't send an engineer to install my machine, then it's all your fault. Rodriguez is the system administrator. I said, no, don't complain that, where'd it go? I am so busy, I didn't have time to breathe. I have a computer, but I haven't been able to open it. Do you remember the file, the small file? Yes, sir. Well, good, it has a very long password. Yes, sir, the long one, the password you put in place. Is that the password? Yes. Well, it's a drag, it has symbols and things. We are talking about a high-level member of a drug cartel here. Saying this. The FBI listened in on this conversation and said, I bet this system administrator would like a nice place to live far away from Mexico. And so they got in contact with the system administrator, who would very much like a nice place to live far away from Mexico. And he swapped out all the private keys. No one noticed, because how do you know it? You're just trusting your computers do what they're supposed to do. This ended well for the system administrator. This did not end well for the drug cartel. Okay, this is an example of public-private key cryptography. Is very important to keep things as well. Yeah. Yeah, this is to show you. All right, so thus far, I've been talking about taking somebody's public key, encrypting it, sending it to them, and then they decrypt it with their private key. What would happen if I inverted this? Because right now, everyone has the same public key, so you can't tell the difference between messages coming in. But if I take my private key and I encrypt a message, and I send it out, who could have encrypted this message? No. Who all has the private key? Only the private key holder has it. Only the private key holder has that key. And we're standing on this assumption we have not lost the private key. So the private key holder can do this. And now everyone can read it. No, this is bad for confidentiality, isn't it? But it's great for integrity. Because now I can say, I am the person that has that linked key. And I can prove that I am the person who has that linked key by just writing anything. And we call this a signature in cryptography. This is the slide I meant to talk about. So anyone with a public key can use it to decrypt, unlock a file. If it successfully unlocks, then it must have been encrypted by the private key. And we use this method. What happens if Alice does both of these? So Alice wants to send a message to Bob. So what she does is that she first takes Alice's private key and she locks the message, which cannot be, and then she takes Bob's public key. Sorry, let me say that correctly. We take the plain text message, we encrypt it with Alice's private key, and then we take that ciphertext and we encrypt it a second time with Bob's public key. We then send it across the open internet. Anyone can get it, you can grab it. And then down here, we take Bob's private key and we decrypt it. We do it the opposite order. We get this ciphertext back, this orange thing. And then we take Alice's public key and we decrypt it a second time.
Isn't this still susceptible to the same man-in-the-middle attack, or we were talking about somebody getting, like replacing private keys?
So we're basically now brought ourselves up to the level of 50 only. We still have not linked Alice's private or public key to Alice directly.
Yeah.
But we have now linked the public and private keys together. So we now know for certain that this public key is associated with the person who is now encrypting this. So we've gotten ourselves up to the level of 50 elements. We have not gotten ourselves up to the level of, let's say, an identification badge of a person. All right, but is everyone staying with me through this? This is where people start getting lost. Because this is where people start getting lost, what I'm going to do, I think, is sharing here. I did this in a very specific order. So when I did it, I said that Alice is going to first sign it using her private key, and then she's going to go and encrypt it with Bob's key. Well, I could have done the other way, right? I could have gone and said, let's encrypt it with Bob's public key and then sign it with my private key. Why not? Why is the top one wrong and the bottom one correct? 3 minutes or 1 minute, think to yourselves.